Hey, yo, it's good, everyone. Twisted here with Open Your Sorcery, and today I want to go ahead and talk about the Tetragrammaton, or the four-letter sacred name of God, at least in the Abrahamic, the Judaic, Hebrew, Christian sort of traditions and religions, what have you, to whichever extents that, they maybe go ahead and revere and or utilize this in a just a reciting of biblical, the Bible and different testaments sort of sense, or even in a more so active spiritual magical sort of approach, what have you. Now at the time of me recording this is in terms of my own recording chronology. This is after I went ahead and recorded about the idea, the concept of the divine light, Lux, the L.V.X, and went ahead and utilized an article by Paul Foster Case. Now, in relation to this particular recording and talk, like in terms of when they'll be released, I don't necessarily know. It's up to my own discretion, what have you, whatever seems appropriate. But I'm going to be doing the same exact thing for talking about the Tetragrammaton as I did with that one. In pretty much utilizing the author and occultist Paul Foster Case, an article of his from his published by the association and society he was a part of, called Builders of the Adytum, which the Adytum is syncretized. It is related to the concept of the Sanctum Sanctorum, or the Holy of Holies, or the place that, in the Abrahamic faith and or in other different sorts of religions, mystery schools, what have you, that those of the priestly sort would commune with the higher, forces, with God, with, the divine light, what have you. And this being the, what is believed to be the name in which, at least in the Jewish and the Hebrew and the Abrahamic sort of faith, is the name that would be utilized in order to call upon this light, this presence, this essence, what have you. Now, as is explained in the article itself, this is our modern interpretation and comprehension of this. But it may not be the actual original one that was utilized, whether it be through translation issues and all of that, or say there being a loss of it due to different conflicts and struggles and the passing of history and not recording it properly, what have you, the case may be. But I will say for myself that in utilizing this particular aspect or name of God, or say a source of light, a source of presence, a sort of power, what have you, that it has been helpful in several occasions when needed to be utilized and called upon. And I'll go ahead and speak a little bit more so about that after I go ahead and read this article and share some extra thoughts, some other points that I think should be mentioned alongside what is mentioned here. So let me go ahead and read this. It is from October 1960. It is a selected article from, once again, the Builders of the Adytum, and the BOTA, I should say, and their, repository of works by Paul Foster Case. So, the Sacred Tetragrammaton. The great name of the God of Israel occurs more than 5,000 times in the Bible. Kabbalists call it the Tetragrammaton, or quadriliteral name. Other divine names, such as Adonai, and Y.H.V.H, are written with 4 letters, but there is only one Tetragrammaton. It is spelled Y.H.V.H. In English, letters I.H.V.H. Now I will go ahead and say, at this moment, breaking away from the article, that alternative spellings that are more so utilized in the common, more so English or Anglicization. Yeah, I'm mispronouncing it, I know, but usually more so people use Y.H.V.H or Y.H.W.H in terms of saying Yahweh or Jehovah or what have you, or Yehovah and all of that. But I digress. I will continue with the article itself. In Exodus 3:15, we read, "This is my name forever, and this is my memorial unto all generations." Solomon's wisdom is said to have been based on his understanding of this name. Thus, 1 Kings 10:1 says, And when the queen of Sheba heard of the fame of Solomon concerning the name of Jehovah, she came to prove him with hard questions. Solomon's temple was a house built unto the name Jehovah. 1 Kings 5:5. We read also in Proverbs 18:10, "The name Jehovah is a strong tower. The righteous runneth into it and is safe." Esoteric tradition ascribes peculiar power to his name and says that to pronounce it is to possess a key to all wisdom and to exercise miraculous control over all the powers of nature. According to the Gospel of St. John, Jesus himself shared the Hebrew belief in the great importance of the Tetragrammaton. In his prayer at the Last Supper, just before his crucifixion, his final words were, "I have declared unto them thy name, and will declare it, that the love wherewith thou hast loved me may be in them, and I in them." Long before the beginning of the Christian era, this name had assumed much sacredness in the minds of the Jews that they never pronounced it when they came upon it in the reading of the scriptures. Instead, they uttered the name Adonai, or else passed over the Tetragrammaton in silence. Once a year, the high priest pronounced the Tetragrammaton in the Holy of Holies while the trumpets sounded loudly, lest profane ears might hear. When the temple was destroyed and the sacrifice no longer made, the pronunciation of the Tetragrammaton was lost. It is not known whether or not the traditional pronunciation was preserved in any inner circle of Judaism or Christianity. We do know that the English Jehovah is certainly not the correct pronunciation, but there is no indisputable evidence that either Yahweh or Yahweh, the forms now favored by a great many Hebrew scholars, was the true pronunciation. Strictly speaking, the Tetragrammaton is not a name at all. It is a form of the Hebrew verb meaning to be, and its true significance is that which was, that which is, that which will be. The writer of the Apocalypse evidently understood this, for the 8th verse of the first chapter of that mysterious book says, "I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the ending, saith the Lord, which is and which was and which is to come, the Almighty." Throughout the New Testament, wherever the Greek noun Kyrios refers to God, it is to be understood as meaning the Tetragrammaton, just as it does in the Greek version of the Old Testament, where Kyrios is written in most places where the Hebrew text has Y.H.V.H. We must not be confused by the fact that from the earliest times down to the present, the Hebrews supposed the Tetragrammaton to be the personal name of God. Throughout the Bible, there are many passages which make it evident that this popular opinion was an error. What it really designates is the eternal reality, without making any effort to define what it really designates. The immensity of that one defies all human endeavors to define it. No human intellect can comprehend it. No creed ever devised by human intellect can tell us what God is. Man can only come near to that reality in feeling and in understanding. We feel that the affirmation God is one is nearer the truth than any form of polytheism. We find a great number of notions about God in various parts of the Bible, which contains a record of human endeavors to understand God, ranging all the way from the thoughts of savage nomads to the profound insight of St. Paul. Yet all conflicting notions rest upon the basis which is given us in the true meaning of the Tetragrammaton. Whatever man may think about the nature of the Supreme Being, God himself is that which was, that which is, and that which will be. So there you have it. Once again, an article about the topic of Tetragrammaton and the four-letter name of God by Paul Foster Case. And with that right there, I will go ahead and just make mention that, the concept that posits of there not being a true speakable name of God, that a singular sort of name was able to go ahead and capture the essence of the totality of some sort of overarching consciousness that pervades throughout all of existence, and or say anything that is less without as much form, or is immaterial, or is within the so far of a perception of what, I guess, for lack of a better term, formlessness, that, we can go ahead and actually comprehend it from a human mind or perspective, what have you, and all that sort of thing. On the accomplished Tree of Life model, the spheres of Ein Sof Or, Ein Sof, and Ein. That being representative in that system of the different levels of formlessness that, the spheres below it on Tree of Life go ahead and help us understand, like, the bridgeway between the formless to the form, the realm of form being Malkuth, what have you, in that sort of manifestation process. But, that we in of ourselves, within this manner, this human mind and intellect and manner of comprehension that we truly cannot understand, that's when we're so experiential and, ascending, rising up, what have you, to attempt to fathom it. But yes, and going ahead and having recited this article, and pretty much going ahead and speaking about the Tetragrammaton in of itself, right? One thing I wanted to go ahead and discuss, within the four, letter name of God, right? So, as I did with the previous recording about, light, lux, L.V.X, what have you, and utilizing the Tree of Life model to help comprehend not necessarily that, but more so of the Shekinah, right? The indwelling feminine nature of God and such, and that I spoke about because it was mentioned in that article, even though it wasn't necessarily the main subject. But alas, I'm wanting to go ahead and do the same thing of utilizing the Tree of Life model, because that is something that, for my own practical usage and comprehension of things, has been very helpful for me. Now, I want to go ahead and speak about Y.H.V.H, right? So, this is pretty much Kabbalah 101 and sort of shit, if someone has never actually gone ahead and looked into the into any of this beforehand, right? Or if you have, this could be a refresher. So each of these four letters, right? Y.H.V.H, right? They have elemental associations, as well as association of different sections of the Tree of Life. So, for the sake of, the order of the name itself, we'll go in a descending manner of how things would manifest from, you could say, the topmost sphere of Keter down to Malkuth. So, the letter of Yod, right? That is associated with the element of fire, right? And right here, when it comes to the spheres that it's associated with on the Tree of Life model, and I have a, visual image right here, an infographic, something to help remind me, because sometimes, I mix the names up myself, what have you, by no means is Hebrew my first language, nor do I actually utilize it all too much in my own magical workings, truth be told, but have it on hand as references. But yes, so in terms of the section, the four worlds, as they're called, right? The Yod letter, that is the fire element, that is, the plane of absolute, the archetypal world, the plane of will and spirit. Now, I'm going to go ahead and mention that in regards to spirit, a lot of people who practice in the Western magical tradition utilize the pentagram, and that spirit is an individual element in of itself, the aether, what have you, that, encompasses all things, including all four of these, elements that I'm about to go ahead and speak on, what have you. But, do not be confused if, that happens to have been confusing for any of you, that because of that sort of association. But I digress. So yes, this is the realm of, the spirit, the will, the out of the four, usual elements for any sort of magical workings that, people usually use in the Western ceremonial tradition, such as the LBRP or, anything else. Yes, this is the highest of those four. And, it's the burning passions, the burning fire, the inspiration, like the burning inspiration for me going ahead and speaking about the subject and recording it and sharing it with you guys, right? That drive, that inner drive, to accomplish something, the will to live, all these sorts of things, right, is associated with this, right? Before it comes into physical being, you have to have that will, that wanting, that divine will, what have you, that agency, that free will that is given unto you by whatever you want to say, God, or, the architect, or source, or whatever you want to call it, whatever part of Eastern, Western, whatever sort of belief system or tradition or comprehension of things you have. But in terms of the spheres that are associated with absolute, so the top sphere of Kether, of course, the next one of Chokma or Hokma, depending on your pronunciation. There's various ways to spell and pronounce these different spheres, what have you. Keter is the crown, and Hokma is the wisdom sphere, what have you. And then the sphere of Binah, understanding, and Hokma and Binah being the top two spheres of the dualistic sort of pillars of Boaz and Jachin, right? And all that sort of thing, which, if I discuss it, I'll discuss it at a later point, more so than now. But yes, that in of itself encapsulates absolute in this particular model understanding of the Tetragrammaton and how it governs over the tree of life as a whole, and kind of more so like a point I want to get to at the end of describing all of this. So then we go ahead and we get to the next letter. So the first hey out of the two heys, right? And in the modern Golden Dawn based interpretation of the elements, what have you, which it goes fire, water, air, earth, as opposed to, say, in more so of a traditional grimoire sense in the Western magical tradition, it would be fire, air, water, earth for my comprehension, right? But just sticking with what most people associate with and are aware of, right? The first hay would be associated with water, right? And that if we're gonna stick with that sort of thing, then in a modern sense, like Yod and Vav are masculine, and both hays are feminine, and all that sort of thing, and they're characteristics of these elements. But in any case, so yes, the first hay is associated with water, right? So we think of water, right? The world that is associated with it is Bria, the creative world, the emotional plane. When you think of water, you think of fluidity, you think of emotion, you think of femininity, you think of the waters of life, all these different sorts of things, right? And pretty much like from these spears in of itself, these spears in of itself. Actually, before I get to that, I'll speak a little bit more about the nature of it, right? So the first, letter is that of fire. That's the initial will. That's the initial drive to get it going, the ignition, right? And then you have, the first hey. That in of itself is like, all right, it's still not solitary by any means, but we're going ahead and, we have that instant spark, so now it's time, it's fluid. It's malleable still. We got to go ahead and figure things out. There's different possibilities still, and we're going to go ahead and flesh that out. We're going to go ahead and chop it up. We're going to go ahead and do what we do in order to determine what exactly it is that, we're going to go ahead and come across and create, into existence, what have you, right? And all that sort of thing. Now, onto the actual spears in of itself, first, in between I will say this before saying this, the other thing is that, there are different models of the tree of life. There are different models of the four worlds. I'm just going with the one that, at least from my understanding, is most so commonly utilized in the modern day and age. And that this particular infographic that I'm using as a visual reference is based on. So with that being said, we have Da'at, the hidden spear, that is placed right here in between Binah and Chesed, or Chesed, right? And all of that sort of thing. So, in that regard, that hidden spear of Da'at, that is the spear of knowing, the spear of knowledge, right? And all of that hidden spear, it's a void space. Think of like a free space in bingo, you could say. And, there's connection of Da'at over into, the tree of death, and that being like a back door or a connecting point, what have you, and other sorts of associations with it. But I digress to keep along with the main points. So with that, we go on to the actual Sephiroth of Chesed, or Hesed, which is compassion, right? And then we move over to Gebrah, which is strength. And then we have Tiphereth, which is beauty in of itself, right? And these being aspects of, once again, there is still formation that needs to be done, and nothing's completely set in stone yet. But there's fluidity, like we're changing, we're going ahead and we're thinking of different ideas, we're thinking of different things, like as it said in Genesis, God moved upon the face of the waters, right? He created the waters before there was the earth itself, or man, or what have you. But yes, so as we go ahead and we continue along with the four worlds and the different letters, we have Vav. And with this right here, and once again, the modern interpretation, we have it associated with the element of air and the world of Yetzirah, the formative world, the mental plane, right? So, how we were still trying to, we had all these different sorts of, possibilities that we were, ruminating and formulating and all of this. Well, this is where we kind of, based on, the idea of, air, in the tarot, there is the suit of swords that is associated with air. So, pretty much think of, we have the sword, and we're chopping things up and kind of making a model. So, you could think of it as, there's a raw sculpture, right? And, how people who make, stone sculptures, they take a chisel, and they go ahead and make the particular model. Think, for example, the Thinking Man, a very popular stone sculpture, what have you. They would utilize, picking tools and, different sharp objects, what have you, to go ahead and, taking quite a bit of time to properly define the features of, say, that sculpture and the other sculptures. Yes, in this case, the element of air, once again, symbolized by swords, is used as a means to disseminate and to kind of bring this, all the different, possibilities in the creative world to formulation, to go ahead and, dilute it down, specify, and all of that, to bring it closer to form in of itself, or what have you. And in terms of the spears on the Tree of Life that are associated with it, we have Netzach, or Netzah. And once again, pronunciations vary with these different Sephira, what have you. And this is that of endurance based on this particular infographic. Think of the Venusian archetype with this one, and more so of its actual core form. I don't necessarily know if endurance is necessarily the best sort of way to characterize it based on my comprehension of it. But yes, right here we have Netzach right here that goes ahead and helps along, with this process first and foremost. Then we have Hod, which is majesty in of itself, and with that right there, it is going ahead and, that is, granted, I didn't really explain the planetary associations with the other spears, but so be it. Like I said, at some point I may go ahead and tackle it. But this is more so the mercurial sort of sense, Mercury being associated with air, so understandable. And pretty much going ahead and helping with the communicative sort of aspect, the specifications. So just like I'm going ahead and speaking, and my words are being distinct and precise and helping to clarify the ideas in which I have and conveying them to you, that is where the aspect of Mercury comes about. And funny enough, I'm recording this in the midst of Mercury retrograde, where communication goes ahead and happens to, not be the best as to what it could be. And granted, I will say that one tip I happen to find that I may mention again at some point is if you go ahead and you drink, put lemons in your water, it apparently happens to go ahead and help your communication and your communicative abilities. And I happen to do that rather often, so it helps out at times, it seems. Just a little bit extra addendum right there. But alas, we go over to the last spear in the this world of the four worlds of Yetzirah, and we have Yesod, foundation, and this is associated with the moon and all of that. The moon in of itself, is a reflection of the sun, is a reflection of the light from above, and it kind of takes that, I guess, using a visual representation, that ball of energy that is not necessarily formed into material matter, what have you, but it shines that light and reflects it more so onto the earth, what have you. Of course, the sun has a direct, shining on it during the daytime, but, the moon being a physical object, which can go ahead and take that light and help, bring it down, to be a little more palpable and all that sort of thing. You can't stare at the sun because it's too damn bright, but you can definitely stare at the moon for as long as you want. Hopefully that helps the comprehension of that concept a bit more so. And, the Yesod, the spirit of Yesod associated with the astral plane and all that sort of thing. So things are relatively more so fluid on that plane of things, or the dream world, what have you, and all that sort of thing. But there still is form, there still is, relative, form and something comprehensible for us when we enter the dream state, or when we go to sleep at night, and all that sort of thing, or utilize our imagination, or what have you, as opposed to, say, the 3D, as opposed to, say, the, physical 5 sense reality that we call and usually associate with term reality. and that we happen to have our conscious mind fixated on for most of our waking lives and such, for on average. And our left hemisphere of our brain is more so concerned with, and all of that. But yes, the last of the four worlds in of itself is associated with the second He of the Y.H.V.H, and I've already talked about fire, water, and air, so no brainer, I'm going to talk about earth, elementally speaking. And not only that, but that the last world is called Asaya or Asiya, and the physical world, the material plane. And in relation to these spears on the tree of life, there's only one spear that has gone ahead and shown on here, of course, and that's of Malkuth, the kingdom. That is the earthly realm, the earthly plane, and such, the material world where we happen to call reality, and we happen to, through the five senses of sight, hearing, taste, touch, and smell, interact with matter and different things of that nature. And we go ahead and these sort of things have been brought into fruition, what have you, from the above down below, right? And also one thing I wanted to share is that in a previous conversation I was had over on the Psycosmos YouTube channel, which I will go ahead and link in the description, that in that discussion, the first discussion that was had between Matt and Devi and I, when we were discussing different things, including the Tree of Life, that from his understanding, and this is something that I am honestly not, the most sure of, but apparently it is something that he happened to get from talking to rabbis that he happened to know, what have you, that the spears of Yesod and Malkuth, the earth and the moon, happen to be interchangeable and function in nature and all that sort of thing. I'm paraphrasing. I definitely, recommend you guys go ahead and check out that conversation for yourselves over on their channel. Once again, I'll link it and all that. Shout out to the boys at Psycosmos for doing their thing. I definitely appreciate, the correspondence that Debbie and I have had with them since our boy Light went ahead and linked us up however long ago. But in making that detour and shouting out, once again, the last world of Asiya, physical world, the material plane, happens to be associated with Malkuth, with the earthly spear. Here it is in, the world at large, the kingdom. Whatever idea, whatever you're driven to do, whatever it is that you want to accomplish, and all that sort of thing, coming to tangible fruition. That you can feel it, you can taste it, you can go ahead and, smell it, whether metaphorically or literally, you know what I mean? So, in that sort of sense, while I could go on many different sorts of tangents more so about this, the last thing I wanted to go ahead and mention and all that sort of thing, once again, I could have spoken a bit more specifically and more so about the Tree of Life in general and in nature, different planetary associations, and the aspects of it, but once again, I'll leave that potentially for some other point. But I wanted to go ahead and mention, in relation to the Tetragrammaton, the four letters of the name of God, right? Something from another YouTuber called Epiphany Lectures, who at this point, at my time of recording, has not uploaded something in quite a few years, but I have found that their material is pretty damn good. And when they were posting and all of that sort of thing, they have a video about Kabbalah Tree of Life 101 and making correlations to Star Wars. Don't we just love our pop culture references and getting a comprehension of things? And one thing that was mentioned, two things I shall say, takeaways from that. And once again, you can go ahead and I'm going to put that video in the description as well for you to go check out that video, which I very much recommend you do, and check out other stuff on their channel as well. But mentioning that the first letter, Yod, right? When you think of Star Wars, what is one of the most popular characters throughout the entire series? From the beginning of it till the present day, Yoda. So, Yod A, or Yod A, right? And something that he didn't mention, but I'm kind of thinking of right now is Yod Hey and then Yoda. Yod A could be a correlation right there, I think that is quite a bit, at least for the part of Yod. I don't know about the first of the two Heys, what have you. But yes, that, and also the hidden sphere of Da'at in of itself, that interrelating to the title of Darth, for say Darth Vader. And of course, as time has gone on, other Sith Lords that have gone ahead and utilized that title for themselves, and more so the dark side of the knowledge, and all of that, of the Force, and that, what have you, and that kind of being tied to the Qliphoth and the Tree of Death, which I believe Epiphany Lectures goes ahead and speaks about in that particular video. But once again, I digress in trying to keep it centered around the Tetragrammaton and the four-lettered name of God of Y.H.V.H once again. And I wanted to go ahead and kind of cap this off by sharing that when utilizing the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, right? When utilizing it as a system or comprehending it, what have you, or doing any sort of spiritual stuff with it, magical stuff, occult stuff, what have you, as I may have mentioned in previous videos, I'm sure I have in different instances of, oh, hey, look, you can go ahead and utilize this archangel or angel or whatever sort of entity that is associated with like a planetary archetype, and referring to the Tree of Life as like a system in which you go ahead and do so, right? Say, for example, Haniel with the spirit of Netzach, which is Venusian nature, or say, Gabriel with the spirit of Yesod, or say, Raphael with the spirit of Tiferet, what have you. Sandalphon with, Malkuth, or Metatron with Keter, or Raziel with Hokmah. I digress, but you're calling upon the intelligence or an entity associated with each particular sphere, an individual aspect, right? But in utilizing the Yod-He-Vav-He, that's calling upon the power of all of the Tree of Life and all the Sephiroth encapsulated into one, right? You could say with a different persona, with a different sort of mask or a different sort of face, what have you. But I will say that from my own experiences, that there's quite a distinct difference in relation to the energy, in relation to the force, the essence of it, as opposed to just going ahead and utilizing one or a handful, a small handful of those spears, what have you. If you're not going ahead and, if you're utilizing Yod-He-Vav-He, and only using partial sections of it. Now, granted, if you're going ahead and you're doing all the different spears, right, and saying like, oh, from order of top to bottom, Keter to Malkuth, you utilize the archangel associated with it, then it could be equivalent, potentially speaking. But yes, in my own experience, I will say that I guess if you want to go ahead and say the power level, to go ahead and reference terminology of Dragon Ball Z and all that, I'll go ahead and meme right here. Vegeta, what does the scouter say about his power level? And then Vegeta's like, it's over 9,000! 9,000? There's no way that could be right. Yeah, there's a noticeable difference between, one and the other. And that is something I have observed within my own experiences and work up until this moment in the instances when I have. So, I pretty much want to go ahead and talk about the Tetragrammaton. I believe I covered that objective and delve into the four worlds and all of that sort of thing in relation to the Tetragrammaton, the name of Y.H.V.H and all of that, whether you want to pronounce it as Yahweh or Yahweh or what have you, in more so of a modern sense, and whether that is actually the true Tetragrammaton or not, I leave that up to you and or others who are interested in the subject matter to uncover that, and also recognize, just as the article was speaking about, that this is not necessarily a name, but a manner of trying to comprehend an essence of being that, we truly cannot fathom utilizing human language. But with that being said, this is Twisted with Open Sorcery, and stay frosty, anecotes. Peace.